Do you make your buying decisions based on facts or emotions? We're going to talk about that more today on this episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker, and on this podcast, we interview all sorts of successful people because we want to learn what they have learned that has made them so successful. Because while a smart person learns from their mistakes, a genius can learn from the mistakes of others. So we're going to dive into what those mistakes and failures are so that we can either avoid them or we can fail faster through them. My guest today is coming to us all the way from Spain. His name is Josias De La Espada, and he is the founder of a great personalized video marketing called Pirsonal. So, Josias, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
It is great to be here. And we had such a great pre-chat about family and life and all of the things. And so now we can get into some of the business stuff now that we are recording. So please tell us a little bit more about your company, Pirsonal.
Sure. So most companies, most organizations in general have issues connecting with their people, their audience. So that's customers, employees, investors, etc. And that's because in the end, we all have lots of distractions, lots of messages we need to pay attention to. The problem is when you have important messages that you want your customers to understand or your audience to understand. If they don't do that, then there is a huge problem because then they leave or whatever. So what we do at Personal is we automatically use the content we all pay attention to, which is video, and we personalized those videos so that every video is unique to the context of every individual at scale. And we leverage technology, creativity, my background in advertising, etc., to connect with individuals using video content at scale.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind of personalized video has got to be AI. I mean, that has changed so much. And now seeing different people's AI avatars, some of them are getting so good. It's really difficult to tell, is this a real person or is this a computer? So I love your take, especially coming from these personalized marketing, as to what what you've seen and where you see this going.
Yeah, I've been in this industry for about 10 years or so, and 7 of those with Pirsonal, with my company. And I haven't seen the level of evolution and changes that we have seen in the last maybe 2 years. Just like it's crazy. The quality is almost there. It depends on the use case, depends on the type of audience, the type of message, the type of brand that uses it. But certainly AI has huge possibilities. We have some of our clients, not all of them, using it. And I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It has, the good face of it and maybe the ugly one,
Yeah.
similar to the name of the podcast. But the possibilities are great. Yeah, are great. It really depends on what the audience needs and what the brand needs to communicate. Because when we talk about personalization, it's not always in terms of, or it's not always with AI avatars. You can also personalize text, video, audio, images, any type of content. And in the end, it's not about just using AI because you can, or even personalizing videos because you can automatically. It has more to do with creating the content that the person on the other side of the screen needs, so that you can connect with them and help them, so they can help them in their journey with your product, brand, and so on. So yeah, that's at least my perspective.
That's really interesting. And it's going to be, it's still really in its infancy. Even though we've experienced this huge change, we're still at the very tip of that explosive growth. So where it's going, we'll look back at this conversation a year from now and be like, oh man,
yeah,
how much more has changed.
yeah, that's correct.
Well, as I started this interview, I asked the question, do people make buying decisions based on facts or based on emotions? So I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of talk more about what you think the answer is to that question.
Yeah. So what I think is also based on what research say in general, and the vast majority of our decisions are based on emotions. And this even goes for decisions that are like money decisions or expensive decisions, even life-changing decisions. Lots of them are based on emotions. Sometimes it's clear, like you have a clear feeling, let's say, and sometimes it's not that clear, but it's behind the scenes in your head, in your mind. But research says that most of our emotions are based, of our decisions are based on emotions. Yeah.
Which is probably pretty interesting, especially if we dissect that even further into right brain thinkers and left brain thinkers.
Mm.
Because most left brain thinkers want the facts and the figures and the analysis, while most right brain thinkers tend to lead with the emotions and being more feeling based rather than thinking based. But at the end of the day, no matter what, your experience and the research shows that it's really emotionally driven.
Yeah, and this is like super in general. So the vast majority of people do take make most of the decisions based on emotions. What changes is that obviously in some cases 1 + 1 it's 2, and you cannot feel that it is 3. It's always 2. However, what changes is that, for example, if you need to buy a car, and you are looking for I have no clue about cars, but about, you're looking for characteristics and you're reading about comparing this with this and so on. In the end, you are still probably you're choosing a brand, and that brand has some kind of value associated to it, technology, comfort, and so on. So even in those cases, we are still talking about emotions. Simple/silly example. When I got married, well, before getting married, when I was younger ish, and I had to decide if I wanted to marry my wife, not even then, if I wanted to start a relationship with my now wife, I made a mental and I believe written list of the yes and no's. I am kind of an emotional driven person, but that came after maybe 11 years or so of really good friendship. So it was easier. Something similar happens with brands and just people. It's just that in some cases it is extremely obvious, and in other cases it takes more time, more resources, and so on for people to make that decision. But generally speaking, we are driven by emotions. Even if you have to sell or buy a spaceship, in the end, you need to trust a brand, and that brand would have some kind of recognition. And those things are facts, yes, but you are still an individual buying, and you have like your own context that will help you then make the decision based on the information you have. And that information could be driven partially by emotions.
It's so funny that you brought up your wife, because as you were talking before then, I was thinking about my husband. And on paper, he was not the right decision to date, to even start dating. But it was the inner feeling of like, oh, I just really feel like a big yes to this guy, even though facts and logic are saying the opposite. So, and to be honest, like dating and getting married is like the ultimate form of marketing, really. Like, it's kind of life consequences are pretty huge when you're considering, who to spend your life with, who to have a family with, all of those kind of things. But I want to go back to brand, as you brought up, and how brand and marketing play together. And is that part of the work that you provide? Because they are two separate things. And I think in a lot of times, especially like in layman's terms, I think people confuse them or exchange the words when they're not actually exchangeable. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Do you mean like, sorry, I didn't get the question.
Like branding versus marketing.
Okay.
And how those two things, how you see them.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think you need branding in order to do marketing. But I do believe that having a strong brand, which would come through a branding process and all those things, will make your marketing life easier. So in the end, companies, organizations, individuals, people have something to sell, something to offer, and they need to offer that to the right audience. They need to understand that audience. They need to create that product, and all of those things are related to marketing. But you could do those things without having a strong brand. In fact, many of the companies we use nowadays, Google and so on, they started with they didn't have like a strong brand at the beginning. That the strong brand came because of the product in many cases, and because of the use cases that we're addressing, because of the right niche that we're targeting, and so on. And all that is related to marketing. I do believe that branding is important, especially nowadays, because there is a product for and a service for almost everything out there, and there is a lot of competition, which means that in the end, talking about emotions, for example, if you have to choose a product or a service or even an NGO or any cause that you want to support, in the end, you would usually think about some kind of values or something that is associated with to a brand. So it is important because it makes your life easier. So, for example, I like Subarus, like the car brand. And every time I see a Subaru, we don't own a Subaru here, so we don't drive a Subaru. But every time I see one, I say Subaru in Spanish or in English, and then my son now does the same. And I've been evangelizing them about the benefits of the brand, because I do want a Subaru, for example, because I like the brand, the car, the values it represents, and the quality, and so on. So that comes because of the brand, because of the marketing, because of the product, etc., which is related to marketing. And then the way I translate that into words to my family is through the brand. So everything is connected, but having a brand is not marketing, but having a strong brand will help you with your marketing and with your sales.
Sure, absolutely. And it's really interesting, tying it all together a little bit there with the emotional piece, but marketing is so much about knowing your numbers. There's so much about testing things, right? There's like almost like a science to it, which seems outside of the emotion. So for you to be so successful with Pirsonal, you're having to balance the creativity, the emotional intelligence, the psychology of understanding how people think and buy, with the science and the math of understanding the numbers and testing. How did that, do you think there's any other job you would have been suited for? Or is this just such a perfect fit for all of your skills?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I would have ended up doing the same, probably with a different product. And yeah, because of the way my brain thinks or works, throughout the year, I pick one or two ideas and I work on those ideas, and I see what things could be, which one I want to execute at some point. It could be right away, it could be at some point in life, if that's still an opportunity. So I think I would have done the same. So I remember when I started, when I was thinking about studying something in college, I don't know how many, 20 something years ago, no, more than that. And
isn't it
I
sad
wanted
when you
to
start thinking about how long school was?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm the
yeah.
same. I'm like, that can't be the right number.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So I wanted to study business administration and law, and this because I like money, but back then it was because of it was the wrong motivation, I believe, because it was like the greedy type of motivation, and in the end I ended up studying advertising and public relations, and then marketing, and then because it combines the things I love, which is creativity, talking to people. I'm not like a super people-oriented person, but I love analyzing people and small groups and things like that. And advertising, communication, marketing, creating something, putting that something in the market. So I love those things. So if it wasn't with personal, I like with my company, I think I would have probably be doing the same, even if it's corporate, depending on the type of corporation, or maybe not really, but something that in the end helps someone, and you're able to create that something that someone is willing to pay for because you are fixing some kind of need out there in the market. And it doesn't have to be even money. There are different ways to pay for a product or a service.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So if you are, for example, if you are a non-for-profit like an NGO or similar, it's not that you are working on that because you want to become rich. And maybe you generate lots of resources, money, freely speaking, but the purpose is not to keep that in your pocket and reinvest it in other profitable businesses. The purpose is fulfilling some kind of needs, some kind of need. So I would, personally speaking, I would be perfectly fine doing that, because in the end you are creating something that has value, that is helping someone, and there is usually a return. Maybe you'll see that return while you are alive, or maybe not. That's perfectly fine. What matters is that whatever you do has some kind of impact. So yeah, it doesn't have to be money always.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot, that chasing money has never brought me happiness. But finding ways to serve other people, which then in turn, the money is the byproduct, has really been the key for me. But I think we've covered a lot of the good. So let's get into a little bit of maybe the bad and the ugly. What are some of the challenges that you have experienced, and what have you learned from them in your career?
Oh, yeah. So talking about marketing, for example, product market fit. So basically creating something that that already has an audience, or even being able to build that audience so that they buy the product, service, idea, or whatever you're offering. That has been a challenge, especially with my previous company, because you could create the coolest product out there. You could have the best hotel, the best place, the best technology, but if there is not if you don't have the right audience that is willing to pay somehow with time, resources, money, and so on, then we have a problem. So that has been a problem in my case, working with technology products. So over the last, I don't know, maybe 20 years, I've been involved with technology products, and not all of them have been a successful story. So yeah, I remember a company that that had shut down a few years ago comes to mind, for example, and a few products as well. And it's similar to a marketing campaign that you launch and then it doesn't work as expected. And then you have to iterate and change and optimize or do something else in order to achieve the goal that you have in mind. That's a challenge. Another challenge that comes to mind, I don't love sales. I like speaking with people and hearing or trying to understand their potential goals, needs, and trying to guide them there. The part I don't super love is the let's close the deal sale process or part. And yeah, anything numbers related is not my it's not my forte, I would say. Even if I'm surrounded by numbers, and I do like more or less numbers, but it's not my strongest area, I would say.
Well, that's an interesting thing to think about. It's funny because like my background's in engineering and I don't like numbers.
Okay. Well, that could be, yeah.
For me, engineering was like, how do things work? How do these go together? What's the logic behind it of, you know, does this make sense? Is there another way to do it? How can I look at this from, this other angle and see something that other people hadn't seen before and bring that together? But when it comes to actually like building a bridge, I'm not your girl.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it.
So What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see most people doing with their marketing before they come work with you at Pirsonal?
Oh, okay. Um, Talking about numbers. So yeah, as an example, this morning I had a call with a really known brand on the consumer side. And when in my sales process, I usually have about maybe one or two calls, actually two calls with them at the beginning. In the first call, we know if we are a potential good fit, and based on that, we continue or not to the next conversation, etc. It's a really old school process, but it works really well for us, and it's a better way to serve our clients as well. And in that first conversation, I try to understand if they have clear goals.
Hmm.
And by clear goals, regardless of the methodology you use, I usually refer to something that you can measure, something that like SMART goals, for example, specific, measurables, something that is actually doable, that you can achieve it, time bound, etc. And I would say that I don't have like a specific number, but I would say that maybe 70% of the people I speak with, and some of them are for like really established organizations, don't have those when they think about creating personalized videos to
Mm.
engage with their audiences. Some kind of a strategy depends on their goals. And what this means is that in the end, they are choosing something that looks cool, creating videos automatically, data-driven, marketing automation, all those things. And the problem with that is that if you launch it, then you don't know what to optimize or if it's working or not. Or if it doesn't work, you don't really know why. And it's because
Mm.
you're not targeting the right goals from the beginning. So I see that that's one of the biggest challenges companies, most organizations actually have. um, yeah.
Yeah, it's something that's quite relatable to people who are more in the solopreneur space that I typically work with, where they think they need to have these big numbers on social media, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially their audience
Mm-hmm.
in many ways. But if they're not filled with the right people, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. You could have 10,000 followers, but if they're
Mm-hmm.
not your people, you're better off having an audience of 500, of
Mm.
the right people. And I think we've become such a society that sees those numbers on social media, whether we're seeing someone on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, that somehow those numbers are providing us some sense of value of who that person is. And it's such an interesting phenomenon that's happening. And I wonder at what point that's going to be
Yeah, for
a
example,
breaking point.
something that comes to mind. Um, so we have a YouTube channel, which is basically, I'm the one that publishes content in the company YouTube channel. Um, and we don't have, I mean, in terms of views, you would cry. In terms of subscribers, you would cry as well. However, um, throughout the years, in the last 7 years, I have spoken to many people that have, maybe it's not thousands, but tens of them that have come through one of the videos
Hmm.
before speaking to us. And in that case, I would love having thousands of subscribers in the YouTube channel from a communication perspective, quote unquote. But at the same time, the way it is now, it's not perfect, but it is fulfilling the purpose or part of the purpose, which is related to my sales process. Because either people, while they are speaking to us, or either they find us through YouTube or through Google or whatever they use, or that sends behind the scenes signals to YouTube, to Google, etc., about the type of information or our area of expertise, etc. Therefore, they show the content in search results and our brand is there, etc. So it helps. But if I would focus solely on having a huge audience, which would be, I would love to have it. Maybe I wouldn't be creating the type of content that is actually helping us in our sales process
Sure.
for the type of information our people need. Another example that comes to mind is, so now if you think about the email marketing world, many companies pay attention to email marketing metrics, and email marketing metrics, which is, it's fine, but they have changed loads because of devices blocking, analytical tools, and so on. So the information that you get from an email marketing tool is not always 100%, it's not reliable anymore. And for many companies, for many organizations, at the beginning of their journey, or once they have launched, or even big campaigns, it doesn't matter. If you think about just email open rates and click-through rates, like how the percentage of people that open an email campaign, or the percentage of people that click on whatever in that email, maybe it's not the right information that you need in order to, if you are trying to get more sales, for example, if you're trying to push people to a specific program or to a specific offering, because what you need to maybe pay attention there is that there are actually people landing in your landing page or whatever, and they will not always come from an email campaign. So it's a bit complex. It depends on the case. But what matters is that if you don't have a specific goal, which will tell you, okay, this is what we want to achieve, this is why we want to achieve this, and this is the audience we want to target, which is maybe a bit more narrow than just a general audience. And this is, in order to do this, we should do this, and this. And we will be happy if we get this specific result. If we don't have that in mind, then it's a bit blurry, because you don't really know what to pay attention to or what to optimize, or even what channel you want to use to communicate with that audience. And maybe it's email, maybe it's advertising, it depends. So yeah, I forgot what was the initial question or the comment, but that came to mind.
That was good information, because it does definitely bring that into mind of what those initial goals are, to get the results that you want. Because if you don't know where you're going, you can get there fast, but you could just also be spinning in circles really fast.
Yeah, so hopefully quickly.
Yeah.
The other day I was talking to this insurance company. They've been a client maybe for 2 years or so, and they need to increase the number, their sales basically to a specific figure. And in our conversation, I had 2 conversations with them. So we have conversations either monthly, quarterly, or yearly with our clients, in order to see where they could do better and how, and the steps, and so on. And in that conversation, we realized that they have practical ways they could, like, to improve sales with what they already have in place, if they paid more attention to certain things in their process, in their engagement process with customers, leads, etc. And what I'm trying to say there is that they were focusing on one particular moment of the customer journey, which is like the different steps we all go through when engaging with a product or a service from a commercial perspective. They were just focusing on one particular part, and they were leaving behind, let's say, everything that would happen before that person gets to that particular point. And they had like a gold mine, quote unquote, before, like in those initial steps that they were not thinking about. So that is also related to the goal. They want to get here, but there are different ways to get there. And in many occasions, we are too focused on what we have here. But when you go to the numbers and you see the different things that are happening, and the different ways people are engaging with a campaign or in the workflow, or the information they need in order to then make a decision, then you see those things in a clearer way. And that's something that entrepreneurs, we do a lot also, because we are totally biased, but companies, regardless of the size of the organization, do exactly the same. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. And I have just one last question for you. And that is, there's lots of other companies and organizations that do similar to what Pirsonal does. What led you to create Pirsonal versus doing this for someone else? Like, what did you feel was missing in the market that led you
Yeah,
to want to create it?
yeah. So it was a process. So yeah, it wasn't like, oh, let's do this. I got there through a process, through even previous products. And something I like from a product perspective, I am more or less a product person. I am actually a product guy. I love products, and is talking to people. And when, especially in B2B, if you sell to other companies, but you could apply the same if you sell to individuals. Um, if you have the option to create, now if you get initial feedback, you create something, you put it in the market, you get more feedback, and you are not, how do you say that in English? You basically stay involved with the process and with the people. You learn loads, like a lot. And in that process, you gain new information. You learn. You find patterns, and based on those patterns, then you keep creating whatever, and then you sell that in the market. So that from a theory perspective or theoretical perspective, that was my process with Pirsonal. Now, from a marketing perspective, I come from the advertising field. And in the end, a few years ago, I realized that most companies had issues connecting with their people. Most brands have issues connecting with their people. There are just too many things to pay attention to. So we are saturated or constantly bombarded. And working in advertising, in the end, you realize, video is video. Most of us pay attention to video content and different ways to back then, email was already a thing, like personalized emails and automations or things like that. Automations were not that widely used, let's say, in the market. So when you combine all those things, you see, okay, so it's like creating ads. You can create video content. If you could use data companies have access to, you can create videos automatically, similar way you can create emails, and you scale that process. So it's a longer story, but generally speaking, that's yeah, I would say that was more or less the process, summarizing a lot. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard to take, years of your life and condense it down into 2 minutes. So you did fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah.
This has been so great, Josias. Thank you so much for being here. Please share with how, the person listening who's just like, well, I obviously need to have a conversation. What's that process look like? How can I get in touch with you?
LinkedIn works for me. Josias De La Espada. If you don't find Josias De La Espada because you don't know how to spell it, that's fine too. You'll find it in the in the credits,
It'll be
I
in the
believe,
show notes. Yeah.
description. Yeah, and even by email, josias@pirsonal.com, personal with an I. So I'm usually quite accessible. So that's perfectly fine with me.
And what about any difference between, I mean, obviously your English is amazing and perfect. You're in Spain, so difference, do you work with mostly Spanish, mostly English? Does it matter?
Yeah, the vast majority of our clients are out, they're not in Spain. They are either in the US or other European countries. And then comes Latin America, and then comes Spain, actually. So yeah, so most of my day is actually in English. Yeah.
Oh, how funny. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom and helping us
Thank you.
to feel a little bit more emotionally connected. I appreciate it.
Happy to help.
And to the listeners, I know you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please make sure to like and share and subscribe so that you continue to be listening to great people like this. Until next time, everyone, have a great day.